1993, getting into the meat of the 90s. 93 would see a fiery confrontation in the Lone Star State.
Is he the son of God?
I hope he is.
Dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Clever girl.
And the beginning of a new era in politics.
You look like somebody just walked over your grave.
So sit back, relax, and crack open a beverage.
Order some kegs of beer.
We're going to talk about the news, culture, sports, and entertainment, and all that was weird in the 90s. This is Timeline. This is where you want to be, because we're about to cover all of 1993. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below your favorite thing from the 1990s. Now, are you ready to go back to 93?
Now you just can't leave.
This is 1993.
Hi, honey.
The year would start off with a breakup. When Czechoslovakia was officially dissolved into the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Known as the Velvet Divorce, a reference to the Velvet Revolution of 1989, the dissolution found the two new countries dividing up their common assets, like military equipment and land. The separation did result in a few odd quirks. Several border towns were literally split in half. But who got to keep the dog? The next day, Wired magazine made its debut at the Macworld Conference. The publication, which promoted itself as the Rolling Stone of Technology, was an immediate success and won 2 National Magazine Awards in its first 4 years of publication. Wired, among other things, coined the term crowdsourcing. On the 6th of January, we go to Washoe County, Nevada, where Jim and Jennifer Stolpa, along with their 4-month-old son Clayton, were on their way to a family funeral in Idaho when they, like the Donner Party, decided to take a shortcut. Their truck got stuck on a gravelly road, and for 4 days, the family waited inside the truck while a blizzard raged outside. When nobody came, the family trudged through deep snow for over 12 hours.
I told her, we're not doing this for you, or not doing it for me, we're doing it for the baby.
Eventually, mother and son took refuge in a natural snow cave, while Jim set out on foot to find help. After hiking over 30 miles, Jim finally showed up at road maintenance worker David Peterson's home, suffering from frostbite and hypothermia. Ultimately, all survived, but both parents did lose toes to frostbite. Also on January 6th, a sad day for music, as jazz pioneer Dizzy Gillespie died. Born John Burks Gillespie, Dizzy learned to play the trombone at age 10. He later switched to the trumpet. His zany stage presence earned him the nickname Dizzy.
Monsieur Moody will give you his royal version because he is truly a princess.
By the 1940s, Dizzy was developing the bebop sound with legends like saxophonist Charlie Bird Parker, pianist Thelonious Monk, and drummer Kenny Clarke. Gillespie continued performing until just under a year prior to death. On January 20th, President-elect Bill Clinton was inaugurated as the 42nd President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The inaugural celebration featured performers Aretha Franklin, Bob Dylan, Michael Jackson, and LL Cool J, and was reported to be the largest gathering ever held on the site. Moving into February, country music star Willie Nelson settled a, $16.7 million tax bill with the IRS. The red-headed stranger found himself in hot water when Nelson's accountants had set up some illegal tax shelters. Nelson's lawyers negotiated the bill down to a mere $6 million, but Willie still had much of his property seized and sold at government auctions. Lucky for Nelson, most of that property was purchased by friends who gave it right back to him. He also helped pay off his debt by recording the album, The IRS Tapes, Who Will Buy My Memories?
Willie needs your help, and he's reaching out the best way he can, through his music.
The next day, on February 3rd, Major League Baseball's Executive Council suspended Cincinnati Reds owner Marge Schott for the use of racially and ethnically insensitive language and fined her $250,000. Schott, who admitted to making racist and anti-Semitic remarks, was banned from baseball by a unanimous vote and directed to attend multicultural sensitivity training programs. Schott would return to work the following November, but remained banned from participating in day-to-day operations until 1998. 3 days later, tennis champion Arthur Ashe died.
I have known since the time of my brain operation in September 1988 that I have AIDS. It was transmitted through a blood transfusion after one of my open-heart bypass operations.
Ashe was the only African-American man to win Wimbledon, as well as the U.S. and Australian Opens. Born in Richmond, Virginia, Ashe learned to play on a segregated playground near his family home. He would eventually attend UCLA, and in 1963, he became the first African-American member of the U.S. Davis Cup team. His prize winnings over the next several years would also make him the first black millionaire in tennis, and his life off the court would make him famous as a social activist. On February 11th, Bill Clinton nominated Janet Reno to be Attorney General of the United States. Confirmed by the Senate a month later, Reno would become the first woman to hold the position, as well as the second longest-serving Attorney General in the history of the country.
I guess most of MTV's viewers' first initiation to you and your name was through the rap song.
Yes, I don't understand all the words.
I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. I have been stabbed, shot, poisoned, frozen, hung, electrocuted, and burned. Every morning I wake up without a scratch on me, not a dent in the fender. I am an immortal.
On February 20th, legendary car maker Ferruccio Lamborghini died. Lamborghini, who worked as a mechanic in the Italian army during World War II, made a fortune with a tractor company that made tractors and later heating and air conditioning systems. Inspired by his love of his Ferrari, he would go on to found an eponymous car company that built some of the fastest, gaudy, and most expensive sports cars in the world. Fun fact, Lamborghinis are all named after famous fighting bulls.
I knew it. Gosh, if only I could call a number, answer trivia questions, and win fabulous prizes.
Well, now you can. Call Trivia Treasures. 1-900-321-1000. Choose from music, sports, movies, science fiction.
Captain Kirk!
On February 26th, we go to the World Trade Center in New York City, which was rocked by a bomb that exploded in the WTC's parking garage.
Arriving ambulances were confronted with 2 dead victims, literally hundreds of injured, and at least 15 hurt seriously by flying debris.
Most of the terrorists connected with the plot were arrested before they could leave the U.S., but Ramzi Youssef, the driver of the van containing the explosives, escaped. He would finally be arrested by Pakistani authorities 2 years later on February 7th, 1995.
The message we wish to send is that no time period too long and no effort too great to make those who kill or injure Americans immune from the U.S. justice system.
In late February, ATF agents raided the Branch Davidian cult compound near Waco, Texas. The agents were trying to arrest leader David Koresh after receiving a tip that the Branch Davidians were stockpiling firearms, and Koresh had fathered children with girls as young as 12. The raid did not go as planned, and instead of an arrest, the ATF found itself in a firefight and then a 2-month standoff with the cult members.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. A fanatical, scripture-quoting religious leader who moved to Waco to await the end of the world, instead maybe to blame tonight for the deaths of several federal agents.
On April 19th, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno ordered the ATF to move in with tear gas.
But I'll stand in front of a tank, you can run over me, but I'll be biting one of the tracks. No one's gonna hurt me or my families. That's American policy here.
The attack triggered a fire, which quickly consumed the compound, killing 80 Branch Davidians. Moving into March, we go to Anaheim, California, where the NHL welcomed the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. Owned by the Walt Disney Company, the Mighty Ducks were named after the Juggernaut film starring Emilio Estevez.
The Ducks? Man, what brain jerk came up with that name?
As a matter of fact, I did. But I didn't have a choice. We're being sponsored.
By who, Donald and Daisy?
They played their first game 7 months later on October 8th, 1993, which they lost. They actually wouldn't secure their first win until 2 games later on October 13th.
Hey, butthead! I just, felt something.
Okay. Ugh. Oil smells like turds.
Yeah. I bet that's why it's so expensive.
On March 12th, we go to Mumbai, India, when between 1:30 and 3:40 p.m., 13 bombs exploded around the city. The first happened at the world-famous Bombay Stock Exchange, then the Air India building, the Sea Rock Hotel, the Plaza Cinema, the Century Bazaar, the Sahar Airport, and the headquarters of the Hindu Shiv Sena Party. When all was said and done, 257 people lost their lives and left another 1,400 injured. March 22nd would be a sad day for Major League Baseball. Sometime after 8 p.m., Cleveland Indians pitcher Steve Oland, Tim Cruz, and Bob Ojeda set out in Little Lake Nellie, Florida, in Cruz's bass boat. The boat was traveling at a high rate of speed in the dark and then collided with a dock by a private home. Oland died instantly, and Cruz died the next morning. Ojeda, the only survivor, told authorities they had circled the lake several times without incident.
Further tests indicated that Mr. Cruz had a blood alcohol content of 0.14% at the time of the crash.
At the end of March, tragedy struck the set of the movie The Crow when actor Brandon Lee, son of Bruce Lee, died in a tragic on-set accident. While filming, actor Michael Massey was meant to fire a revolver at Lee as he entered the room. However, in the preceding scene, the same gun had been loaded with dummy rounds, which were made with the tips of real bullets, so that the gun would appear loaded when shot in a close-up. When the dummy rounds were removed, one of those bullet tips separated and remained in the gun. When the gun was fired, the blank shot the bullet tip at Lee, striking him in the abdomen. Brandon was rushed to the hospital, but succumbed to his wound shortly thereafter.
Yeah, it's Scrabble, America's good time game.
Alfred M. Butts, inventor of the board game Scrabble, died. Butts invented the game during the Great Depression when he couldn't find work as an architect. Despite going on to sell over 100 million copies, the game's marketability wasn't recognized by manufacturers at first, and it wound up going unsold for over 2 decades. However, in 1952, a Macy's executive saw an independently made version of the game being played at a resort hotel and decided to put Scrabble on the shelves. On April 16th, Chancellor Jonathan Bennett, better known to most of the world as Chance the Rapper, was born in Chicago, Illinois. The future rap star grew up in West Chatham on Chicago's South Side. His love of music began at an early age with Michael Jackson. However, once he heard Through the Wire by Kanye West, he fell in love with hip-hop. And in 2011, he would record his first mixtape, 10 Day. The next day, a federal jury announced their verdict in the civil trial against Sergeant Stacy Kuhn and officers Theodore Brazano, Lawrence Powell, and Timothy Wynn of the LAPD. This time they were on trial in a federal court for violating King's civil rights by their unreasonable use of force. Wynn and Brazano were acquitted again, but Kuhn and Powell were convicted and later sentenced to 2.5 years in prison.
I think justice has been served. Nothing left to burn. I just feel that way. I'm just glad for Rodney King.
I'll never forget the time Mom went to the store and forgot to get the Crunch Berry cereal. No Crunch? Good thing Captain Crunch has a fax machine. Then, there they were. The Captain, the only berries to crunch, and part of my balanced breakfast.
Heard Mom messed up big time.
April 21st brought the end of a 10-day-long prison riot that involved 450 prisoners in the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. The riot's main catalyst stemmed from Muslim prisoners who were afraid they would be forced to receive tuberculosis vaccines, which would have violated their faith.
There'll be no reprisals once this is over. Say that they committed suicide, but we know have blatantly killed.
The rioters did $40 million worth of damage, killed 9 inmates, and took 8 guards hostage. At the end of April, we go to Hamburg, Germany, where tennis star Monica Seles was knifed in the back by a disturbed man named Günter Pachia during a changeover between games. Seles wasn't seriously injured, but she was taken to the hospital. Seles wouldn't play again for the rest of the year. Considered mentally deficient at his trial, Pachia was sentenced to 2 years on probation.
I'm off. But, Sammy, can I let you in on a little secret? I knew you'd come back. You did? You can never be unfaithful to your one true love. You always come back to her.
Heading into May, an era came to an end when Cheers aired its final episode.
To the folks at NBC, Cheers is not just a TV show. It's all we've got, ladies and gentlemen.
Over 42 million households watched the 98-minute finale, which made it the second highest-rated season finale of all time, right behind the finale of MASH.
Wow.
On June 20th, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls defeated the Phoenix Suns 99-98 in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The Phoenix Suns, led by that season's NBA MVP Charles Barkley, had the best record in the league. Nonetheless, the Bulls pulled through, securing their third consecutive NBA championship. Michael Jordan, as you might suspect, was named MVP of the series. Just 3 days later, late-night talk shows got years' worth of comedic material when Lorena Bobbitt picked up a kitchen knife and proceeded to cut off the member of her sleeping husband, John Wayne Bobbitt.
And I found myself in the street with a in one hand and the knife in the other. So yeah, that happens.
It happens.
It's a true story.
Lorena eventually went on trial.
I remember when he told me about the syringes to go through my bones and I was gonna die.
And would be found not guilty by reason of insanity, spending 5 weeks in a psychiatric hospital. John Wayne Bobbitt was later charged with marital assault in a separate trial and was also acquitted of the charges against him. Next, we land on the 4th of July in New York, where people were treated to a lot more than fireworks when the Pizza Hut blimp crashed into an apartment building on Manhattan's west side. The blimp's crew had radioed for help after part of the tail broke and fell into the Hudson River.
I was on 48th Street. It was up in the air. All of a sudden, it exploded.
The crashing blimp in the afternoon sky sent rooftop sunbathing apartment dwellers scrambling.
We thought it was a parachutist because the thing was just this huge balloon that came flying down.
Meanwhile, the blimp's gondola, along with its pilot and co-pilot, were left stranded atop the building. No serious injuries were reported.
Big Bird, don't let it sneak up on you.
On July 23rd, a little over a month after his NBA championship, superstar Michael Jordan's father, James, was murdered along a North Carolina highway. The elder Jordan had pulled over on U.S. Highway 74, just south of Lumberton, North Carolina, to take a nap, when Daniel Andre Green and Larry Martin Demery spotted his car. The two men shot Jordan, dumped him in a swamp, and made off with his car. It wasn't until the thieves went through the victim's belongings when they realized who he was. The two were captured, and both men were eventually convicted and given life sentences.
Coming up next on WBZ News 4.
I don't know how we'll get through the rest of these days and whatever, but Reggie was a Celtic. He was a captain.
During an off-season practice at Brandeis University, 27-year-old basketball star Reggie Lewis died. Lewis had only recently been misdiagnosed with a condition called focal cardiomyopathy after collapsing on the court during Game 1 of the Boston Celtics playoff series. Lewis was led to believe he had a less serious condition and was encouraged to return to training. Lewis's death was attributed to a heart defect known as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is the most common cause of death in young athletes. Heading into August, in a 96-3 vote, the United States Senate confirmed Supreme Court nominee Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ginsburg, who had been nominated to replace the retiring Justice Byron White, would be the first Jewish judge to sit on the court since Abe Fortas and would become an icon for women's rights.
I have had the great good fortune to share life with a partner, a man who believed a woman's work, whether at home or on the job, is as important as a man's.
On August 9th, 27-year-old Heidi Fleiss, also known as the Hollywood Madam, well, hello there, pleaded not guilty to pandering and other criminal charges. Fleiss, who had been managing her own prostitution ring since 1990, had gained notoriety when the media learned that her clientele included celebrities. While Fleiss was convicted, the judge was later overturned. In 1996, federal tax evasion charges would land her 7 years in prison, but in the end, she only served 20 months. On August 23rd, Michael Jackson made the news for all the wrong reasons. While the singer was in Thailand preparing for performances that were part of his Dangerous tour, local Los Angeles news station KNBC aired a report claiming that Jackson was the subject of a criminal investigation.
These statements about me are totally false. I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected.
The report repeated claims by an unnamed woman who said that her child was abused at one of Jackson's homes.
Get ready as Marvel Comics' Dream Team bursts onto Super Nintendo in Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge. It'll take all your mutant powers, Spidey's webs, Wolverine's adamantium claws, Cyclops' optic blasts, Storm's lightning, and Gambit's exploding cards to foil Arcade's diabolical plot. This is too much action for you. Take it up with this guy.
On September 4th, French-born actor Hervé Villechaize took his own life. Villechaize, who left a note saying he was depressed by health problems, was best known for playing Tattoo on Fantasy Island and his catchphrase, and was also memorable as the henchman Knick-Knack from the James Bond film The Man with the Golden Gun.
This way, Monsieur Bond.
Agent Mulder, I'm Dana Scully.
So who did you take off to get stuck with this detail, Scully?
Actually, I'm looking forward to working with you. I've heard a lot about you.
Oh, really? I was under the impression that you were sent to spy on me.
You were actually the winner of the sidekick competition.
Yeah.
You actually weren't even entering. What happened to you?
I got on the back of a box of donuts, this scratch off and win thing.
Right.
Here I am.
All right.
Thank God I love donuts.
Oh, how was your date last night? Boy, that feels strange, a son asking his father how his date was last night. When he could ask the date herself.
You gotta do what Randall Pink Floyd wants to do, man. The older you do get, the more rules are gonna try to get you to follow. You just gotta keep living, man. L-I-V-I-N.
On September 26th, after being sealed up inside for 2 years, 4 men and 4 women emerged from Biosphere 2. The experiment was testing whether humans could sustain themselves in a finite environment. The biosphere itself contained microcosms of an ocean, savanna, desert, marsh, and rainforest, and over 3,800 species of plants and animals. Associate Director of Research, Abigail Alling, described the experience as an extraordinary challenge. Moving into October, we turn to some maybe cult news, where the Church of Scientology was granted tax-exempt status by the IRS. While the church had once held such status, it was revoked due to concerns that the money was being used to enrich founder L. Ron Hubbard. The church allegedly used methods like blackmail, burglary, falsification of records, fraud, harassment, tax evasion, theft, and frivolous lawsuits, among other criminal acts, trying to force the government's hand.
One certainly couldn't contest anyone as holy as the Commissioner of the IRS, whom I believe gives God his orders, LRH.
In the end, a settlement was reached, where the church agreed to fork over $12.5 million to settle their tax debt, which was estimated to be closer to $1 billion.
On October the 1st, 1993, the IRS issued letters recognizing Scientology and every one of its organizations as fully tax-exempt. The war is over!
On October 3rd, U.S. military forces set out on a snatch-and-grab mission to arrest 2 lieutenants of the Somali warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid. However, the operation went off the rails fast. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were downed with rocket-propelled grenades, and another chopper landed a block north of its target. U.S. Rangers and Delta Force attempted a rescue, but found themselves caught in a firefight and cornered for a whole night. 18 American soldiers and hundreds of Somalis died in the melee. Fast forward to 2002, when the film Black Hawk Down, directed by Ridley Scott, debuted. On October 6th, still reeling from his father's passing, Chicago Bulls superstar Michael Jordan shocked the sports world by announcing his retirement.
When I lose the sense of motivation and the sense of to prove something as a basketball player, it's time for me to move away from the game of basketball.
At the time, Jordan was the highest paid athlete in the world, with endorsement deals from corporate giants like Nike, Hanes, McDonald's, and Gatorade. Right before Halloween, horror movie icon Vincent Price died. Price, famous for his roles in movies House of Wax, The Fly, House on Haunted Hill, and The Mask of the Red Death, also played villain Egghead on Batman. Recorded music with the likes of Alice Cooper, and reemerged in the 80s for his monologue in Michael Jackson's song Thriller. On Halloween, some sad film news when Italian director Federico Fellini died. Best known for films like 8½, La Strada, and Nights of Cabiria, Fellini's memorial service was attended by over 70,000 people. Heading into November, we go to Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, where during a heavyweight fight between Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe, James Miller, also known as the Fan Man, tried to crash the fight from the skies wearing a fan-propelled glider. The parachute on his glider got caught in the lights, and Miller slammed into the ring ropes. Bowe's entourage, believing they were under terrorist attack, pummeled Miller into unconsciousness with their walkie-talkies. Miller was rushed to the hospital and eventually arrested. Holyfield would go on to win the bout. In late November, Kelvin Cortazar Brodus Jr., better known to the world as Snoop Doggy Dogg, released his debut album, Doggy Style. Critics were near unanimous in praise of Doggy Style, and today it is considered a defining album of its genre, and an essential classic to gangster rap fans.
How would you describe your flow on this album? I mean, your flow, Snoop.
Laid back, just trying to let everybody know who I am, a small introduction to me.
Doggy Style remains Snoop's best-selling album, selling over 11 million copies over its lifetime. Moving into December, we go to Colombia, where kingpin Pablo Escobar was taken out by Medellin police. Escobar, who had escaped from prison the year before, was Colombia's most wanted fugitive. Police tracked Pablo to a safe house in the residential neighborhood north of Bogota by tracing a call he had made. Escobar attempted to evade capture by running across the rooftops of adjoining houses, but the police caught up with him. Pablo took several rounds, including one through the ear. 2 days later, on December 4th, musician Frank Zappa died. The eccentric multi-instrumentalist gained fame with the 1966 release of the first album from his band, The Mothers of Invention. Though rejected from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice in his lifetime, he would finally be inducted in 1995. Zappa's legacy has since been embraced by guitarists and fans of outside-the-box rock music. On December 9th, U.S. Air Force officials began the demolition of 150 missile silos in the Show-Me state of Missouri. The work, part of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty that the U.S. had signed with the former Soviet Union, saw all Minuteman II missiles stripped of their nuclear warheads. The warheads were handed over to the U.S. Department of Energy, who dismantled them, and the missiles themselves were handed over to NASA, who used them to launch satellites into space. Finally, on Christmas, Cirque Du Soleil opened a permanent show called Mystère at the Treasure Island Hotel in Las Vegas. Founded by fire breather Guy Laliberté in 1983, Cirque Du Soleil debuted as part of Quebec's 450th anniversary celebration of explorer Jacques Cartier's discovery of Canada. The show appeared at the Los Angeles Arts Festival and became an instant hit. A later iteration of the act, entitled Nouvelle Expérience, toured the U.S. and resided in Las Vegas throughout 1992 and 1993. And that's how 1993 ended. 1994 was just days away, and it would be a year where a rock star would meet his untimely end. A former running back would flee, and the king of pop would marry into rock and roll royalty. But that is for next year. Coming soon, 1994.
It stinks.
So what do you think? Where were you in 1993? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other timeline videos.